Good morning, everybody. Let's see if we can find a seat. Everybody scrunch in. We've got a pretty packed audience today. Jarita, please. All right. We got the cat herder here. Thank you, everybody, for coming and joining us. Welcome to beautiful Melbourne for all of our international guests. My name is Dwayne Hummacher. I'm an associate professor and the director of the Cultural Astronomy program in the School of Physics here at the University of Melbourne, and I'm the vice president and president-elect of ISAC. This beautiful woman here is Jarita Holbrook. She's the president of ISAC. I'll let you introduce yourself.
I am Jarita Holbrook. I'm affiliated with the Harvard Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, the University of Edinburgh, and the University of the Western Cape. That's a long story. And I'm your president for a few more days. So welcome.
Thank you so much. And thank you to all of our online guests joining us today. So it's been an exciting opportunity to be able to host this conference here. This conference series has been running since 1981. This is the first time that it's come here to Australia. So we're excited about thinking about how we can look at the field of astronomy and culture, cultural astronomy, how learning about the past can help guide what we're doing today and help direct our pathway forward into the future, not only in academic terms, but in terms of how we can continue to engage communities, ensuring that all voices are heard and trying to navigate how we move forward as humanity expands our presence into space, into the future. So we're really excited about that. I do want to mention that, of course, we are on Wurundjeri land. So I want to acknowledge the Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation and pay respects to all elders past and present. Auntie Annette Zibris will come up and give us a welcome in just a minute. But I also want to thank all of our First Nations colleagues from around the world. And we've tried to make this conference focus on Indigenous and First Nations astronomy and try to give a voice to the Global South. I know Australia can be a challenge with that because we're so far away and it is quite expensive, but we're happy that we've got people here from over 30 countries. So it's going to be an exciting week and we're going to get things kicked off. I do want to just mention a few housekeeping things. So there are bathrooms, toilets behind us on the left in the hallway. We're going to have exhibits over here. We're going to have 30 minutes for morning and afternoon tea, and that will be catered. And we're going to have an hour off for lunch each day. So lunch is on you guys, but you can stay here at the cafe, but we're also in the middle of beautiful Melbourne, which is a bit of a food mecca. So you'll have no problems finding things to eat. We are going to have our reception tonight at University House. As soon as we finish here with our last session, we are going to have a conference dinner on Thursday evening. And then Friday, for those of you who booked a ticket, we're going to get shuttle buses down front and we're going to head over to Spotswood, to Science Works to watch a planetarium show about black holes. I was informed the other day that it's not about Voyager. New show is in about black holes, but I think it won't matter. Everybody's going to have a blast either way. I do want to send out an enormous thanks to all of our sponsors. As you may have noticed, the registration fee is quite low. We did that on purpose. To try to enable as much participation as we can to make it as inexpensive as possible, which means we needed a huge amount of support to help cover all of our gaps. And all of these organizations have come in, particularly the IAU, the CSIRO, the Centers for Dark Matter, Plants for Space, OSGRAB, the Australian Academy of Science. So many have come in and given us quite a large amount of money to help get things going and to help provide travel grants for everyone else. Is there anything you'd like to say?
Yes, so I've been participating since 2004 with the Oxford conferences. And the one thing that we've brought in is the school. I don't know if you wanted to talk about this.
Please do. Yes.
So we spent last week at the Cultural Astronomy School.
Drea.
Yes.
Okay. Get the mic.
I got this one. I just have to hold it properly. right? And this was a huge success. It was about 45 lecturers and students, and we covered all important topics in cultural astronomy. And that is filmed, and you can catch all those videos on replay on the YouTube channel. So I encourage you to watch that. In case you're a seasoned cultural astronomy researcher, you can see what lies we told. And in case you're starting, then you'll have some foundation in which to build your research.
And on that note, all of these sessions will be recorded, and then we're going to post them to YouTube on our channel immediately after. Now, I discovered last night that if I upload too many videos at once, TikTok gives me a ban for a day. So today's talks are going to be on a separate YouTube channel that I will post, but tomorrow onward, they're going to go up as soon as possible. So I do want to say that this entire conference is being supported by a lot of graduate students and student help, and everybody's a volunteer. So, you know, be patient. Thank everybody for the patience as we navigate our way through this. So I do want to make a couple of announcements. So for everybody that got your bag, we have a special artist, Mia Forrester, who is the daughter of Vincent Forrester, Uncle Vince. I saw you. There you are. And Janine Oldfield, who designed this bag. And then we had Casey Domingo and Harriet Hurley, who actually had them printed on the bag. So there's a little card inside of your bag that tells you a bit about her. As well, we ordered the lanyards from an organization, and they're done by Amanda Hinkleman, who's a Wiradjuri woman and artist. So that theme on your lanyard is night, which we felt was quite appropriate for what we're doing all week. So what I would like to do now is invite Auntie Zibras, Wiradjuri elder, to come up and do a welcome to country for us.
My name's Annette. You know, I do a million welcomes, and I've done the dream time at the MCG. But when you got your elders and peers in the audience, such as Marcia, Sam's brother over there, you always get so goddamn nervous because you don't want to muck up. But this is NAIDOC week. Happy NAIDOC, and I just wanted to take a bit of time to explain about NAIDOC. What a lot of people don't realise is that when Indigenous people fought for our rights, we also fought for the rights of women in Australia and minority groups. Back in the 70s, whether you're Aboriginal or not, if you had a child at a young age out of wedlock, the child was removed. Women weren't allowed to drink in pubs. Aboriginal people weren't allowed to drink in pubs. Women weren't allowed to vote. Aboriginal people weren't allowed to vote. And we didn't have equality, you know, we didn't have equal pay rights in the workplace. Neither did women. So when Aboriginal people fought for the rights of our people, other people don't realise, but other Australians that were minority groups and women come along and got the rights we got without the blood, sweat and tears. NAIDOC week is about celebrating that. And what I like to say when I do that is imagine if we come together as one, the minority groups, the lower class society and Aboriginal people, imagine the human rights we could get for everybody. So I just want to explain a little bit about NAIDOC and us celebrating, but also that other women and minority groups in Australia got what we fought for, and we still haven't got it yet. I was at the Women's Football League and the Wheelchair League, and I found out that the women in sports still don't get equal pay or equal rights to the men, and the same with our Indigenous football groups. We're still facing racism on the football fields, which isn't good. But this week we celebrate what we've achieved, not only for ourselves, but for everybody. I'm an archaeologist by trade. I'm the longest serving woman in Victorian Aboriginal cultural heritage. And I own the only Aboriginal archaeological company within Victoria. And I was really privileged at one stage. I had a gentleman called Sam Wickman, an archaeologist as well. And we had a whole black team running with about 20 people. We had 6 qualified Aboriginal archaeologists, and we had something like 20 Aboriginal archaeological assistants, and we actually achieved it. And we ran the salvage program for a long period of time. I was an Aboriginal site officer, which means I was in charge of Uncle Jim, and we repatriated all our people. We repatriated over 400 people, and I was the first woman again within the perimeters of Victoria to do the repatriation. And when I first started, the boys said, "Oh, look, reburial's a men's business." And I said, "Look, guys, for a start, reburials aren't cultural, they're a contemporary thing. And show me a burial where there is only men, and I'll gladly stand back." But they couldn't do that, so I went ahead with our reburials. But I was at a place once called Minji with a gentleman called Bates, and he was with another gentleman called Dan Witter, and he told me a story, and I thought I'd tell you the story. But they used to trade with our Mount William stone axes, and he told me the songline of it, and he told me that around a campfire in Broken Hill. And he told me a story about Bunjil, the eagle, when he flew out over the world and he created everything. When he went back to the Dreamtime, there were 7 naughty women in Winji who wouldn't stop mucking up. And so Bunjil went back to the Dreamtime, but he heard a ruffle across the land, so he come back out, and these women were being bad. So Uncle Badger told me that Bunjil got the women in his wing and flicked them into the sky, and they started burning. And today they're known as the 7 Sisters. And they're a story from our people that's also in the Greek Orthodox that explains that if you muck up, you'll be ostracized from community and put out. Then I had the opportunity and working with a guy called John Morris, and we're working down in Watherong land. And there was a ceremonial site there out the back of the Yuyangs. And he did some study there. And I don't know if this is true or not, but he told me that on a certain day when the sun come up once a year, that it hit one of the stones in the stone arrangement and it lit it up. And that was the sign that it was time to start ceremony. So, there is a lot to do with astrology. And there is a lot that, being along the East Coast, we all come off Aboriginal reserves. So we have lost little bits here and there, but it's working together as one. We can find those missing parts of the jigsaw puzzle, put it together and tell a holistic story of my culture, my time and my past. So what you're doing today is very beneficial. And if we work together, like I said, that's the key. And if I welcome my country, then it's your responsibility, as NAIDOC is this year, is looking after the younger generations for a future for all. But looking at it, and you welcome. You're welcome. So you have to look after the people, and you have to make sure that everybody's safe, not just Aboriginal people, but all people on the land. And that all salam, my sisters, and all the people are looked after on country. And when you're welcome on with that responsibility to look after the land and look after the people. It once was and always will be Wurundjeri land, but now you're here, it's your land too, and it's your responsibility to take care of. And I was doing a talk once in Castlemaine, and I talked about Bunjil and how it doesn't matter what religion you come from. We all believe in a creator, and we all believe that we're created from the land, whether it's God, whether it's Allah, whether it's Bunjil. And even if you don't believe in it, you believe in evolution, you still believe we come from the land and we were migrated into cells, molecules, and evolved into what we are today. And I was given this talk in Castlemaine, and this gentleman said to me, "Look, I respect your dream time." He said, "But I believe in Adam and Eve." He said, "I believe that." Why? I said, "Okay." I said, "But wasn't Adam and Eve from the Middle East? So they would have had to have a nice colour at least, eh?" And then I said, "Look, was there apples in the Middle East, or was it pomegranates and figs?" So that was 2 out of 3 wrong. And I said, "But he must have got the 3rd one right, eh? Because if Adam and Eve had been black, they would have said, 'Stuff the apple and ate the snake.' And we wouldn't be in the shipyard today." Virgin now. Welcome to Melbourne. My land is your land. Please look after the children and the land. Thank you.
Thank you, Auntie, for that. Deeply appreciated. For those of you online, we'll share our slides after this. Sorry about that. I'd next like to introduce Professor Barry Judd. Professor Judd is the Deputy Vice Chancellor Indigenous here at the University of Melbourne and a huge advocate of all the work we're doing in this space. So, Barry?
Thank you. Good morning. I'd also like to start by acknowledging that we meet here on the unceded territory of the Wurundjeri Wurrung people and pay my respects to their elders, past, present and future. Traditional owners, elders, knowledge holders, esteemed guests, colleagues and friends, it is with great honour that I am here today at this conference on Indigenous astronomy, hosted by the University of Melbourne. This conference, which is held to make visible, celebrate and learn from the profound wisdom embedded within the Indigenous knowledges that have guided human understandings of the cosmos for millennia, constitutes an important event in efforts to elevate Indigenous knowledges within the Academy. The University of Melbourne's commitment to Indigenous peoples is enshrined in Muramuk, which is a strategic statement that recognises the inherent value of knowledge systems that originate in Indigenous culture and society. Muramuk, which by the way means working together in Woiwurrung, seeks to move beyond acts of recognition. It is a call to action, a responsibility to embrace and amplify the voices that have long echoed the rhythms of the universe. Indigenous knowledges are not relics of the past. They are living, breathing repositories of wisdom that offer us a deep understanding of our place in the cosmos. The concept of sky country, a sacred realm that encompasses the celestial bodies and their movements, is a testament to the profound connection between Indigenous peoples of this continent and surrounding islands and the universe. Within sky country lies a wealth of knowledge that transcends mere astronomical observations. It is a map that guides us through the intricate tapestry of human existence, connecting the past to the present and illuminating the path forward to Indigenous and indeed human futures. The movement of the stars, the cycles of the moon, the patterns of the seasons are not merely phenomena to be measured and recorded to determine the laws of physics and science. They are signposts that inform appropriate forms of human behaviour, reminding us of our duty and responsibility to live in harmony with all things we share this world with. One powerful example of this cosmic wisdom is the story of the Seven Sisters, which has been mentioned already this morning. And the version I speak to is the version from the desert country, a sky country narrative that transcends borders and connects many Indigenous peoples across the vastness of this continent. This ancient story, woven into the tapestry of the night sky, speaks of the responsibilities that men have in their relationships with women and what happens when those responsibilities are set aside and women treated as objects to be possessed and used as a mere means to the power, lust and greed of men. The shame of not abiding by our responsibilities to women as men is writ large on the night sky, a monthly reminder of what comes of bad and immoral behaviours forevermore. Just as the stars guided Indigenous people in transcontinental travels on this continent and Indigenous navigators across the vastness of the Pacific Ocean and seas elsewhere. Indigenous knowledges offer us a compass to navigate the complexities of the contemporary world in which we find ourselves. By embracing ancient wisdoms as we look up to Father Sky, we open ourselves to a deeper understanding of our place in the cosmos and our responsibilities as stewards of this precious planet, our mother, the Earth. By fostering an institutional environment where these knowledges are respected, celebrated, and integrated into our academic pursuits, we pave the way for a more holistic and inclusive approach to scientific inquiry. As we delve into the depths of Indigenous astronomy, let us approach this endeavour with humility and reverence. Let us listen to the voices of the knowledge keepers whose ancestors have gazed upon the same stars that illuminate our skies today. Let us honour the traditions that have withstood the test of time, and let us learn from the cosmic wisdom that has guided generations before us. In doing so, we not only deepen our understanding of the world around us, but also strengthen our commitment to the principles of respect, reciprocity, and reverence that have guided Indigenous peoples here in this place for at least 65,000 years. So I'm going to go off script now because I actually wrote this piece before Dwayne emailed me late yesterday afternoon asking for something completely different. So I apologise if I'm stepping on other speakers' toes this morning, but the importance of this conference, I think I've already encapsulated, and I just want to end by saying events like this are really important to the Indigenous activity of the University of Melbourne because it centres that activity within the core activities of what a university is, and that is academic programs, teaching and learning, and research activity. So events like this are critically important to myself and my colleagues in trying to embed Indigenous knowledges in our institution. And as Australia's leading research institution, it's critically important that we do this. We need to show the way to all other universities in Australia and indeed other institutions globally that these things are important. Indigenous people have critical knowledges and information that are beneficial not only to the revival and strengthening of Indigenous cultural practice and knowledge, but to humanity wherever they may be. So thank you, and may this conference be a catalyst for a deeper appreciation and integration of Indigenous knowledges in our collective pursuit for cosmic understanding and what it means to be nice, properly behaved, respectful human beings. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Barry. That was fantastic. I'm happy for you to say whatever you like. So thanks, Barry. Appreciate that very deeply. I think it highlights the importance of what we're trying to accomplish here, and I hope we're able to achieve that this week. I would now like to invite distinguished Professor Marcia Langton, AO, who is the Associate Provost at the University of Melbourne and the Foundation Chair of Australian Indigenous Studies. She has an enormous background in a number of different areas, but has been critical for helping to shape the protocols across the university and around Australia. So, Professor Langton.
Thank you, Dwayne. Thank you, Dwayne. So a big warm welcome from me to all of you. And many thanks to all of you from other countries who've come here to this marvellous conference to share your knowledge. I too want to acknowledge the traditional owners, the Wurundjeri, the Woiwurrung speaking peoples here of the Kulin Nations. We live and work on their lands on this side of the river, and are very grateful for the way that they share their knowledge with us too. I want to first of all invite you while you're here to see the exhibition at the Potter Museum of Art on Swanston Street. It's not very far away. I'm sure Dwayne will give you instructions or directions on how to get there. Please make sure that you see the second floor. It's an exhibition of works by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander artists about their astronomy traditions, including the great Seven Sisters sacred narrative that Barry just spoke about. I think you'll enjoy it very much. And it's serendipitously timed to coincide with your conference. And so to see the artworks of the very astronomers, the Indigenous astronomers that some of us have learned from is really a privilege. And I want to also say this: we are all here to achieve a greater understanding of the complex layers of scientific information in Indigenous knowledge, of the stars and the skies, and how this living legacy is important today. These systems of knowledge have inherent value and have led our scientists to better understand celestial phenomena and the history and heritage that constitutes it for all Australians and all people. And when I say astronomers, I mean Indigenous and non-Indigenous. There is so much more to know about Indigenous sky knowledge, and the great challenge is to ensure that the Indigenous astronomers have the opportunity to transmit it to future generations. My hope is that a new generation of astronomers, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous, take up this task of preserving, documenting, and sustaining this bequest from the ancestors and learning from them and from the sky. In my childhood, as I've said in my preface to Dwayne's fabulous book, The First Astronomers, I remember the best of times occasionally, and one that stays with me is lying under the night sky and seeing the Milky Way in all its glory, a great blanket of sparkling lights seeming to hover over me. In my adulthood, I took my children travelling across the country to give them this experience. Far from the city lights, we joked about the Starlight Motel as we lay in our swags next to a small fire and watched the nightly show of the great river of stars moving slowly over us, the twinkling stars, the shooting stars, the Southern Cross, and other great constellations. Distant relatives and family friends had wonderful names like Starlight, Sunlight, and Moonlight. And I knew that in the skies was a world that my people held and cherished. Now we must travel further across the country to find the dark night, free of the glow of the cities and towns, to see the night sky in all its wonder. But what I've learned throughout my adulthood is that our people held great bodies of knowledge about the sky and the bodies in the sky. And only much more recently, when I became aware of this work in the field of astronomy, I learned that there were specialists, both in our own Indigenous societies and in Western science, who could explain in detail the movement, attributes, patterns, meaning, and significance of happenings in the firmament. So when I met Associate Professor Dwayne Hummaker and learnt about research and collaborations that he's conducted I had an epiphany. And so I invited Dwayne to join us as a member of our expert panel to advise on the National Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Curricula Project in 2017. And I'm sure that during the course of the conference, you will be shown the website. It's very simple. It's ngarrnga.org, NGARRNGGA.org. And we have a suite of astronomy curricular resources for children from grade 5 to grade 12 that are free to all teachers and schools. And we are presently trialling them in 6 schools. So now all Australian teachers will be able to teach Indigenous sky knowledge, assured of the rigour and authenticity of the information we freely provide to all. And our Australian children, all Australian children, can learn about this great Australian legacy of ancient and living knowledge systems. We also have Dwayne's marvellous book, The First Astronomers. And in Australia, it's the first detailed account of Indigenous sky knowledge. And Dwayne worked with several Indigenous elders, Gillar Michael Anderson, John Barser, David Boson, Ron Day, Sigar Passy, and Allo Tapham. The book is the result of 10 years of patient research, but there is so much more that underlies it. Of course, there have been extraordinary journal articles published since then, and I'm not an expert, but I will mention them because I'm sure that there are people in the room like Dwayne who can talk about these. And one concerns the star Canopus, is that right, Dwayne? Which has in Tasmania a 12,000-year-old history preserved by Indigenous knowledge holders, despite the genocide. And present-day Palawa, people of Tasmania, have worked with Dwayne and others to document the observations that Indigenous people made of that star then and now. There are other extraordinary works in the at the research stage also. It's important that we do this work. And one of the very important reasons is because, especially here in Australia, there are those who deny the intelligence and scientific traditions of Indigenous people. But with our knowledge that the Indigenous astronomers and our astronomers have collaborated on, there is no going back. The idea that the only science is Western science must be consigned to history. But our task is so much more than academic salvage of past traditions. We have an opportunity to create further accounts of both historical and living Indigenous sky knowledge, much of it communicated through the artistic and poetic narratives about the great ancestors who made the world, so that the power of oral traditions become evident, with sky phenomena remembered over hundreds of generations, or deduced with the finely honed observational and analytical skills of the first astronomers themselves. There is so much to talk about in this field, so I must keep my talk short. So I won't mention some of my favourite works out there. Oh, yes, I will. So I'm a descendant of the Iman people of central Queensland. My grandfather was an Iman man. And when I saw the star maps that Gillar Michael Anderson had worked on with Bob Fuller, I immediately recognised the old route that people took and there's so much more to do on these star maps, because just south of our country, there were giant bunya forests, and people came from thousands of kilometres away to join an annual or biannual feast of bunya nuts. And it was one of the greatest gatherings in our history. It no longer takes place, sadly, but we know so much about it. And people came from many faraway places via the star map routes. And I've learnt just recently about another extension to the star map route that extends down to the central coast of New South Wales. So one of my grandfather's people ended up down on the central coast of New South Wales, intermarried there, and the stories continue there amongst the Gumbaynggirr speaking people. If we keep asking questions, we'll find more and more answers. And so I'll be following up on that one with you, Dwayne, and your colleagues. One of the things Dwayne says in his book is this: if astronomy is one of the oldest sciences, then astronomers are surely among the oldest scientists. For as long as there have been what we might consider astronomy, there have been those who study, develop, and teach it. And this astronomy was practiced long before the invention of telescopes, electronic cameras, or supercomputers. In First Nations, astronomers are the keepers of knowledge that informs nearly every facet of life and culture. And I want to assure you that our first astronomers are both men, include both men and women. As we know from the Seven Sisters story, that story is kept predominantly by women. And it tells us not just about the Pleiades, but also about the conditions of being female. And it's one of the most powerful and important narratives. It crosses the country from north to south, from northeast Arnhem Land to Port Augusta, and in South Australia on the southern coast. And there are still many segments of the Seven Sisters dreaming track that are observed by women. And so these traditions have more than just a scientific purpose, of course. They have a profound social purpose. So another wonderful example that I want to mention is the example of Betelgeuse, which was long known by Aboriginal peoples, but only discovered by Sir John Herschel in 1840. And it's another one of those great bodies of knowledge about the constellations and the stars that Aboriginal people knew about before scientists told us about them. So I don't want people to think that a Western logic must be applied to Indigenous knowledge. That is far from what we need to achieve and far from the truth. The fact is that Indigenous astronomers knew about, and many still know about, the sun, the ecliptic, sunspots, solstices, and seasons in enormous detail through daily observations of the sun's pathway as it rolls across the sky, remembered in oral traditions, preserved in narratives, songs, designs, and dances. People know about the moon, standstills and eclipses, the variability of stars, and so much more. So if we have the opportunity to speak intimately to the knowledge holders about such things, about moon halos and how rain can be predicted, the survival of people who are so immediately dependent on nature, as so many Indigenous people are, will be more assured. And astronomy is a tremendously important part of the knowledge system that will sustain Indigenous cultures into the future. I learnt more about astronomy when I went to live in the desert as a young anthropologist, and I met a marvellous Pintabee man. His name was Pinta Pinta, which means butterfly. And he taught me in a very gentle and oblique way that the skies above us are part of the environment we live in and part of the estate. And so he made me understand that we as placelings in this world stand on the earth but look up at the sky. And how could it not be so in a culture such as the Pintabee culture in Central Australia and so many others, where life was lived under the stars. So asleep at night, waking up as one does to keep the fire burning, the sky is always there and it changes. And it's breathtaking, and each night is a fleeting and different experience. But in the sky, there are ancestors and stories that are important to the survival of the people who live under them. And it is because they have a deep knowledge of it that they were able to navigate across the deserts, Australia's vast deserts, and memorialise the water bodies, the safe routes, the trading routes, and so much more. And each year we find out more about these knowledge systems. A wonderful example is the Mythica stone arrangements in Queensland. If you have an opportunity to have a look at those, I hope that, you know, the astronomical aspect of those stone arrangements is better understood. So far, they're treated as not predominantly signs of astronomical knowledge, but rather something else. But it's obvious that there's more to learn. So to live and eat well in our cultures meant being guided by our first astronomers, but also taking responsibility ourselves for learning about these great bodies of knowledge. And this is why you are here, to help us keep these wonderful bodies of knowledge alive and to progress our understanding of them. So I want to assure you that this conference is very, very important to us, and that your contributions will be valuable in any way that you make them. So I look forward to seeing the proceedings of the conference and to assisting in the future of this great endeavour, which here at the University of Melbourne is regarded as one of the key areas of our Indigenous knowledge and Indigenous studies program, and you obviously understand why. There is no other university that has a cultural astronomy program such as ours. I'm very pleased that Dwayne has had the opportunity to progress it here, and may 1,000 flowers bloom. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Marcia, and Marcia and Barry in particular for, you know, being able to facilitate all of this work happening here, because it wouldn't happen without you. I would like to say that is a tradition within the ISAC conferences. We normally call them Oxford, because the first one was held at Oxford in 1981. that we have a bit of a break in the middle of the week because nobody can sit through 5 days of too many talks, no matter how much we love talking to each other. So that day on Wednesday from noon onward, we're going to have a citywide scavenger hunt. And this is meant to get people outside enjoying Melbourne and seeing the sights, but also as a bit of a learning experience. So the Ian Potter Gallery, which is right next to the physics building, right next to my office, is hosting the 65,000 Years, a short history of Australian art exhibition. As Marcia said, the entire top level is dedicated to Indigenous astronomy. That will be one of the stops for everybody on that. So even if you decide not to partake in the scavenger hunt, please go see that exhibition. There's a map on it, on our Google map on the website. So go check that out. And on Friday, we're going to kick off with the session on education. And I'm going to provide a whole slide with details about the Nanga project and all the education modules that we're providing around Australia for that. So what we're going to do now is we have a couple more. We're going to get into the first two actual academic talks. Then we're going to take a break. So letting everybody know, I need to jump on and share those slides with the people online. But everybody's going to have a 20-minute slot. So it's 15 minutes for your talk, maybe a minute or so for questions, and then transfer time. So as this is the tradition of most conferences, I'm going to have my 2-minute sign down there. I'm going to be waving it up. And if you go on for too long, we're going to get the big hook and pull you off stage. But I know we're not going to have that problem. And then we're going to have a nice catered morning and afternoon tea. And then I'm going to use the cat herder at about 2 minutes till to bring everybody in so we can start on time. So give me 1 second while I transfer the slides. We got to share with everybody who's joining us online. If this will allow me to do that. Everybody can see my laptop and all the stuff I'm doing. Where? Give you 1 second. It's always something, right? Every time. All good? Excellent. So we're going to have a very short introductory session on frameworks and theory. And I thought it would be a great opportunity to start the conference talking a little bit about the history of cultural astronomy and what's happening and some core theoretical frameworks within our discipline. So I'm going to be very excited to introduce Alejandro Martin Lopez from Argentina, who's going to come up and give our first academic talk.
Okay, good morning. My name is Alejandro Lopez. I'm from Argentina. I'm an astronomer and anthropologist. And the talk today is astronomical heritage, cosmopolitics, shamanism, and hegemonic modernity. I have the idea of talking about two things. For one hand, present a concrete case analyzing the experiences with a group of indigenous participants in a training program as guides in the Provincial Park of Meteorites in Campo del Cielo, Argentina. But in the other hand, to talk about some important methodological and theoretical points. The change of mythical systems, the constructions of indigenous versions of modernity, and also the category of border things. Okay, the context of our case is the dispersion, the meteoritic dispersion of Campo del Cielo in Chaco province in Argentina. It's a very old meteoritic dispersion, 4,000 years ago, with many craters and many big metallic meteorites, and of course, a long cultural history. In the same region lives the Mocoit Aboriginal people. I'm working with the Mocoit Aboriginal people from 1988, and they are originally hunter and gatherers to the first part of the 20th century. The historical records claim that these people know about the meteorites long time ago and also know that are things from the sky and guide the Spaniards to some of these meteoritic fragments. In more recent times, some very big meteoritic fragments are unearthed. For example, the Chaco meteorite, that is the second largest in the world, and the Gancedo meteorite, that is the third largest in the world. Exist many different non-indigenous interests in these meteorites. Exist religious cults, popular festivals, scientific studies, of course, and also smuggling. And these interests are focused mainly in the impact issue and also in the metallic nature of these objects. But for the Mocoit people, the interest is different. They know that these objects come from the sky, but they are more interested in the idea that are powerful beings of the sky present on Earth, connected with fertility, abundance, and power, and of course related to leadership, and for this reason have a very important political meaning. As the result of the increasing non-indigenous interest in these meteorites, start a process of national heritage that is underway today, with many conflicts with the interest of Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people. And the Mocoit people make very strong claims for participation, first in the territory and the management of the territory, second in the message about the meteorites, and third in the economic benefits of the tourism. In this context, we start the training project for young Mocoit guides, Nawek Hataganak, that is still in work. In this process, elders from the Mocoit communities acting as trainers for the young guides. Also, Mocoit leaders act as a local coordinator of the group. We have a technical team. I am a coordinator of the technical team. And these are our guides. During the training stage, 2 years, they learn a lot about different things, but especially they have many two-day camps in the Craterthon with the elders to learn about their own traditions. The elders share their knowledge about the animals and the food, the bush and the meteorites and the sky. The young guys getting to know the exhibition at the Park Interpretation Center and design routes for the tourists into the bush, but also meeting with the elders at night. In these meetings, the elders share their stories about the sky and the young people listen. This situation is similar to the traditional context of learning about the sky in the Mocoit communities. And they identify in the sky some of these non-human beings. You have here some of them. But also, and the most interesting for today is that during these situations, the young people also begin to share personal accounts of experiences with non-human beings, with deep emotional impact for them that include altered experiences of time and space, for example, and that are very amplified in the powerful space of this crater zone and also at night. And they consult the elders about the meaning of these experiences. And the morning, as is usual in Mocoit communities, the people talking about the night and the success, the things that happen at night. For example, how did you sleep last night? Did you have any kind of dreams? Did you notice any sounds of shapes moving outside at night? And during these experiences, the young people share the experiences during the night. You need to take into account that dreams are not for Mocoit people psychic experiences, but real dimensions of the universe. In this context, the dreams are interpreted to understand the meaning. And in many occasions, the young people talk about they interrupt their sleep because sounds and go outside the tent to research about the origin And in some occasions, they encounter with powerful beings in the bush. To understand these situations, they use the mythical and traditional stories, but they use as living things, as past experiences of encounters with these kinds of things or beings in the past. And for this reason, in this context, emerge new forms of these mythical stories. In the same sense, every instruction session, including during the day, was more than the transmission of an ancient knowledge. It's also the reenactment of a real life knowledge about the sky, the world, the cosmos, and the relation among humans and non-human beings. And this implies itself an act of power and puts you in a vulnerability position to the intentions of these powerful beings. During the day, also, they go to the bush to understand about plants and animals, but these works imply precautions, requests for permission from the owners of the forest, and specific ways of behaving within the forest. To understand all of this, it's important to take into account modernity. But we need to think in modernity as, you know, an unfinished project that is also multiple and is reformulated in the local situation by the subalternized people, taking new forms and acting as a tactical form of reappropriation of this hegemonic modernity that is imposed to them. During the first supervised guides in the 2 years, 23, 24, the young Mocoit guys have many difficulties and problems to face. And beyond the technical difficulties of interacting for the first time with a non-Aboriginal audience, they have the difficulties of dealing simultaneously with non-human entities that are not real for the tourist, but are very real for them. At night, the tourists are more sensitive to these Mocoit experiences of the night sky. But even with the best intentions, misunderstandings or controlled equivocations arise between tourists and guides. One, for example, is for Mocoit people, the humanity is composed by men from Earth and women from the sky. And when women are in special powerful states, like, for example, menstruating, and are close to special powerful places, like, for example, the bush or lagoons, this is a very dangerous situation. In this situation, the Nanay Kalo, or mother of snakes, that smell these menstruating women can unleash violent meteorological phenomena. During one of these practical guides, the information that a tourist is menstruating generated a lot of concern among the male and female guides. The subsequent storm that broke at night, this very night, generated an intense debate about how to manage these situations in the future. The Mocoit do not expect to have the only authoritative voice in this management of the meteorite, but they aspire to have almost one voice in this table. To think about in which manner these different ideas are integrated, we can think in the theoretical notion of border things. These are things around which certain human groups articulate in a physical way actions, with each one maintains a very different interpretation in the details. And all of this, of course, is in the context of a difference of power. The meteorites of Campo del Cielo are functioning really as border things. A loose articulation of actions and meanings and a complex series of cosmopolitical disputes are simultaneously deployed around these meteorites. For example, exists a lax consensus about meteorites are things that are important and must be protected and are of interest to everyone, and that the Mocoit have a role because of the antiquity of their relation. But also exist cosmopolitic disputes. Are these things inert objects or are living entities? Who is the people that can spoke about these meteorites? In which context? To which? To end, when a symbolic system is alive, this symbolic system changes. And this is always. And these symbolic systems of the Mocoit people and also the systems of the non-indigenous people in this context are living and changing. For this reason, it's very important for us to study the processes of change when we study the astronomical living traditions of today. The heritage management and also astrotourism initiatives that involve indigenous communities are not merely settings for the replication of an static and old tradition, but it's also the place for the generation of new ideas, of new applications of these old roots. This space for the production of new and compelling knowledge and practices relating to the sky should not be seen as degradation, but as new forms of these mythical roots. We also take into account that the encounters with non-human entities during both their training and guiding are crucial part for the Mocoit experience of this process. The interesting thing is in many occasions, the Mocoit people don't say a word to non-indigenous peoples about all of this. And this is part of this loose articulation of the border things that permits to these people to have some space to give their opinion. Meteorites and other forms of heritage act as boundary things around which genuine cosmopolitical disputes take place. And most of these debates occurs through the form of control equivocations, shaped by this loose articulation and differences in details. These dynamics allows less powerful actors to have a voice in this discussion without a very strong conflict with the other parts. And these processes play a key role in the construction of a very genuine alternative of hegemonic modernity. In this case, we can talk about a shamanic modernity. Thank you for your attention to this very short presentation.
Thanks, Alejandro. Perfectly on time. I love it. We've got time for a question. Does anybody in the audience have a question? I saw Ray your hand first.
Right at the beginning, you're talking about the meteor shower.
Yeah.
Was the area inhabited at that time? And if so, there probably would have been a big event of supply. So are there any folk memories from the songs and stories about that event?
You know, we don't know exactly because it's a very hard land to have archaeologists working. It's too hot and a lot of bush. And in these times, maybe it's covered by some kind of waters, no so deep, but we don't know if at that time exist people. But also, the Mocoit have stories about the descent of these celestial beings, but these are not the main concern of the Mocoit. They are very interested in the contemporary and actual situation of these objects, not in the past descent. And because for them, all the time are things and beings going up and going down from the sky. This is not a very spectacular issue, you know.
Mike?
Yeah, lovely talk. Thanks very much. I noticed a picture of Bob Hague trying to remove one of those meteorites from the country. Is there now legislation to make sure that all meteorites are part of national heritage? Yeah, thank you for the question. Yes. First of all, in Argentina, it's forbidden to take any of these pieces of Campo del Cielo. If you see some of these pieces online for sale, please don't buy it because it's illegal. And we have many of these pieces by sale in the shops of many museums, including Australia. This is a very bad thing, but happens all the time. And it's very important to understand that people come to the country with money and put money in very poor people to steal these objects. This is a very important issue, and it's a responsibility of all of us
of the international community to not expand this, because it's very difficult to control.
You to retrain the people that are working with you and
No, no, it's my bad English, maybe. No. The issue is many of these kids are born in small communities and don't have contact with elders. And the program puts together elders for different communities and kids for different communities. And this make more strong boundaries with the past tradition.
Real quick, do we have an online question?
Yeah.
Can we read one out?
Do Macoy people have a guidance to interpret the phenomenon in writing?
It's oral. It's an oral tradition, and this is very important because oral traditions have a dynamic that is very different from writing traditions. And it's more moving, and do you have many sub-traditions because people living in different places have different traditions in their communities. For this is very interesting when elders from different communities come together and discuss each other about things, and you can sit and listen very carefully because very important things are happening in that moment.
Thank you very much. Can we thank Okay, I'd now like to welcome Wayne Orgeston to come up and speak for us. Wayne is a long-term co-founder and editor of the Journal of Astronomical History and Heritage, among many things, and has quite a diverse educational background. So, Wayne, thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne, for the honor of being able to attend the conference and also for helping us get here. What I want to do is talk about a different area of history of astronomy that hopefully you'll find interesting. And let's just find, okay. The trouble is, okay. Yes, so what I want to do is talk about the way in which we're looking at the past and trying to use that to investigate changing astronomical systems. So I'll be giving some introductory comments just briefly, then talk about number 2, number 3, number 4, and finally some concluding remarks as shown here. I've got a cartoon there, which I always enjoy showing. This is a description of astronomy taken from a particularly canine interpretation, but I think we can all appreciate that. So we're talking about astronomy in this particular conference. We're talking about cultural astronomy. And when I was thinking about this paper, well, how can I start it? What's it all about? I realized actually it started here at this university because more than 50 years ago, I was going to say 50,000, more than 50 years ago, I got my postdoc here. And I used to teach prehistory. I actually replaced John Mulvaney when he went to Canberra as professor of prehistory there. So I taught about human evolution, about prehistory, about environmental prehistory, that is, particularly in Bass Strait, and also geology. And I moved to the geology department after my postdoc was finished. And those were areas I did research on and I used to teach. And then I went into astronomy. And then 50 years later, during the 1990s, suddenly I'm back in astronomy thinking about why don't I actually exploit those areas I used to work in and relate those to astronomy. And so the obvious way is cultural astronomy. Being a Kiwi and being part Maori, it made sense to look at the Maori astronomy. So I started with that and then moved from there, as you can see on the map, to India and Southeast Asia and started doing what we call now multidisciplinary ethnoastronomy. It's a new area where what we try and do is combine data from different disciplines. So astronomy, anthropology, genetics, particularly mitochondrial DNA and Y chromosomes, geology, linguistics, paleoanthropology, which is human evolution, prehistory and paleoclimatology, combine all of those and try and look at the way in which you can interpret astronomical systems from a chronological perspective, the way in which they would change over time. So the starting point for this is the idea that there's actually a direct correlation between prehistory and, between human evolution and astronomy. And we see that represented in many different examples from around the world, where there's a direct correlation between the nature of human ecology and astronomical systems. I could give many examples. Our previous speaker could give beautiful examples from South America, but I'm just going to give two here to explain this, and both relate to work that I'm either involved with or very familiar with. So the first relates to these people called the Padi from central India. When you have a look at them and look at their night sky, you find there's a direct correlation between important elements of their ecology, their diet, and the night sky. So we've got fieldwork that was carried out there. And what we find during the fieldwork is that there's a particular kind of net which is designed to catch these birds that you can see on the bottom left picture. And this net is transportable. It can be set up in the forest. The birds cluster in large numbers. They're very noisy. So you've got forewarning that you've got birds there, and you can go and capture those birds. You can capture large numbers of birds. Each bird doesn't provide too much food, but if you've got 50 or 100 or several hundred birds, you've suddenly got an important contribution to the mainstay of the diet. And we find that the nest and also the techniques of bird collecting and capturing in the forest in India is represented in the night sky, not just with the actual representation of the birds, the Pleiades in this case, but also with the net. This particular kind of net is one of several different styles of net for catching different kinds of birds and animals. And this net is represented directly in the night sky adjacent to where you'll find those birds. So we've written a paper about this in the Journal of Astronomical History and Heritage, which documents the details. We're here in Australia, so it's obvious that I should be giving a second example which relates to Australia. And we've got the authors of the paper again published in JAHH. So Michael Anderson, Ray Norris, and Ray's here in the audience. Hand up, Ray. Okay. And Michelle Trudgett. And this relates to emus as dark lanes in the night sky. So we see that extending from the Coalsack to Ophiuchus. And we see this represented, for example, in the paper that they wrote amongst the Kamilaroi and the Ahulid tribes. And what we see with this is that the nature of the emu, the shape of the emu changes in the course of the year as the emu travels across the sky. And we can relate the change in shape and the timing of the emu with the availability either of eggs or of chicks. So if you go and have a look at ABC in this, and then look below on the bottom right, you can see the correlation is actually listed there. It's a very, very fascinating paper. There are other similar papers that Dwayne and others have published about other examples like this from Australia. So there's a wealth of material that you can read on this. And then, of course, we've got other examples from other parts of the world. Oh, sorry. I've got my long distance glasses so I can see you, but I can't see my screen when I'm trying to change slides, which is difficult. Okay, so my question is this. Well, when we go and do these studies, such as we've talked about, we're looking at the way in which there's a relationship between the night sky and human ecology at a particular point in time. So we're looking at an astronomical system which through our studies is static. But astronomy is part of culture. And as we, as prehistorians know, culture evolves and changes, sometimes devolves through time. So we could expect that there would be changes taking place in astronomical systems through time amongst the same group of people. So let's just investigate, let's just investigate that concept. And what I want to do here is just identify some of the triggers that may lead to changes in astronomical systems, and then we'll go on and we'll have a look at a few examples of those. So one of the things, obviously, if you've got a major change in the environment, you're going to get changes in the habitat. So you're going to get dietary changes. And you've got major things like sea levels changing. So in the diagram in the middle left, we've got an example there showing the way in which the sea level has varied over the last 125,000 years. So on the right-hand end of that scale is the present day. The thing that you see that's really important there is that the present day sea levels around the world have only been where they are now for the last 6,000 years. Prior to that, back until 125,000 years ago, the sea has always been lower than at present. And so the shores of any area, any country, any region of the earth change markedly during that time. We can see an example of this by looking at the top right-hand picture, where we've got there the location of the shoreline at the time of the last interglacial sea level low, which is 125 meters below the present time. And this is about 18,000 years ago. And then from that period of about 20,000 years ago, the seas rose rapidly to reach the present level about 10,000 years ago, 8,000 years ago. And that sea level rise would have been actually visible to people on a generation to generation basis. You would see your habitat disappearing as the seas rose and drowned out your habitat where you were collecting food, or your seashore area where you're collecting particular kinds of fish or shellfish. So this would cause major changes. We've got major climatic changes which relate also directly to these changes in sea levels. We've got areas, particularly around the Ring of Fire that runs from Japan through to New Zealand, where you've got episodic volcanic eruptions, which would have made some areas particularly unsuitable for habitation for a long time. And then the other thing that's possible is that you can get a human population migrating or relocating to a new location that's never been occupied before. Suddenly they're faced with a totally new environment. How do they respond to that? And how do they have to change their original human ecology to adapt to this new environment? So those are the sort of things happening. We also get human populations moving from one location to another where there's already people living there. And if you've got, for example, hunter-gatherer people living in the location, and then you get relocation by people who've got horticulture, or they've got agricultural pastoralism, so they're herding animals, there's going to be totally different astronomical systems introduced. What happens when you get the amalgamation of these cultures? You get the introduction later on, particularly in this Southeast Asian part of the world, of introduction of new religions, all of which have got their own astronomical systems. So Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, particularly relevant for the area that we're researching in Southeast Asia. And finally, again, we've got colonial astronomy. So we've got the British, Dutch, French, and Portuguese in Southeast Asia taking over areas which are now mostly independent. But when they were introduced, when these different colonial systems were introduced, they brought with them their own colonial astronomical systems. So we've got all of these sorts of changes if we're looking at, say, the last 50 to 100,000 years, so the period when Australia is occupied, for example. So I want to just give a couple of examples to illustrate how this is relevant to what we're talking about today. And the first is to look at my own home country, New Zealand. So Nalani and Gareth, this is for you especially, and Dwayne, because he's also published on New Zealand ethnoastronomy. So when we had Europeans first arriving in New Zealand in 1769, they found a system of agriculture relating to the kumara, the sweet potato, found throughout the country. Down as far south as the Christchurch, which is halfway down the east coast of the South Island of New Zealand. Below that, it was simply too cold for kumara to be grown. And this kumara cultivation was very well developed, and it also was closely interlinked with the Maori astronomical system, so that there are certain constellations or there's certain asterisms in the night sky, which I show on the map there, numbered 1 to 5, which relate to specific aspects of Maori cultivation of kumara. So certain stars, the appearance of them will indicate time to clear the fields, then to plant the kumara. Then there's an indication again from astronomy of when to harvest the kumara. And then again, you've got a correlation between particular stars and when to carry out the different ceremonies before you then go through the cycle again the following year. So there's a lot of documentation on this, led mainly by Elston Best, who is shown there on the picture at the top right, who was the ethnologist at the National Museum for quite some time. And he carried out a system of studies of a whole range of different cultural aspects of New Zealand. Okay, so what's the significance of that? How can we show change in this case? Well, it relates to the settlement of New Zealand and the fact that the people who came to New Zealand, the ancestral Maori, did not have kumara as their dietary staple. They came from the area of the Marquesas Islands, Southern Cooks, and they came to New Zealand between 1250 and 1280 AD. So we've got a very clear indication of when they arrived. There's a lot of archaeological evidence for this. And when they arrived in New Zealand, they brought with them a diet that was based on taro and yams. But they found New Zealand was far too cold to grow taro and yams in any kind of sustained way. They could grow taro and yams in small quantities in the northern part of the North Island in sheltered, warm environments. But it wasn't possible to use taro and yams as a dietary staple. So while they were busy hunting all of these giant birds, which we can see on the right, the moa, and familiarizing themselves with a totally alien environment, completely different from what they're used to in tropical Polynesia. So suddenly we've got a land with high mountains, with snow, we've got volcanoes all over the place. They're trying to work out what they can do in terms of providing a dietary staple, and they recognized that kumara was possible. It took a couple of hundred years for them to be able to adapt kumara growing because they couldn't just transfer it directly from their ancestral homeland. They had to overwinter the kumara tubers and then plant them again, whereas they would just grow all year round in their homeland. So this not only involved developing a system like that, but also developing gardens which are in localized areas. We can see this bottom left-hand diagram showing where there were particular stone alignments and ways of enriching the soil and able to grow kumara. And that kumara as a result then, good God, where'd that go to? Where are we?
You went back the other way. It's all right, we'll get there.
Yeah. No, I've just got 2 slides, so I'm finished anyway. How did I lose my?
Just gotta push the right button here. We'll get there.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
Okay.
Is that good?
Yeah, it was the one before.
Yeah.
So those are examples. Well, that's an example of changing astronomical systems. We've also got colleagues in both Philippines and in Indonesia who've been looking at the impact of religion, in this case Islam, on the changing astronomical systems in the Philippines and also in the island of Madura in Java. And we can see on the bottom right, for example, all of the different villages where Siti Fatima did field work as part of her PhD program. So this is ongoing work. Some of this has been published, some hasn't yet. And concluding remarks, where do we go to from here? Well, actually, had COVID not occurred, there would be other examples I could have given you. Instead, now we're just trying to gear up to do some of the kind of research that we would hope. So one of the areas I'm particularly interested in as a person who studied human evolution is to have a look at the way in which we've got different indigenous groups of people around the world, particularly in Southeast Asia. And on the left-hand map, we've got locations where what are called Negrito people, these are short people with a totally different morphology to the bulk of the population in those areas. And we can see examples of them on the right-hand side in the 3 pictures. And we find them in the Andaman Islands, and we find them in southern Thailand, in Malaysia, throughout central Malaysia, and then on a whole range of different locations within the Philippines. And what we're trying to do now is look at the different ethnic groups within these Negritos So if you take the second row of maps, the bottom one, all of those dots represents locations where there are tribes of these people who've been documented. And the different tribes have different astronomical systems. Within the tribes shown in yellow, we have postulated there are actually 3 different sub-astronomical systems. We're trying to document those now, and we're trying to show them the ways in which those change through time, particularly as a result of the sea level change for the period 22,000 through to 6,000. And also, as other people moved in later during the period 10,000 to 6,000, you've got these people moving inland, so away from a coastal environment into a hostile forest environment, where again, their ecology is going to change and their astronomical systems have changed. So we look at the present day astronomical system and try and postulate the way in which that would have changed over the last 20,000 years. That's what we're trying to do at the moment with colleagues in the Philippines. One of the other things that we can do is to have a look at the way in which genetics now provides an enormous amount of valuable information, not just for the Philippines and Southeast Asia, but here also in your country, here in Australia. And so I've got here a map showing the very latest documentation on genetics, mitochondrial DNA from all those sampling locations, and we can see a whole range of different tribal groups. And what we're trying to do now is isolate some of those and try and identify which particular ethnic groups are involved and what their astronomical systems are, and look at the relationships between those as we then project those people back in time. One of the interesting things that we've also done is we've done a study of folk tales represented in the book that was published in 1916 and tried to see if there's a basis of truth in most of these folk tales and legends. And of course, we know there is. So one of the things, for example, we've got documentation of beings falling from the sky into rice fields and into other locations. And we can postulate that some of these relate directly to meteorite impacts. So we get back to what Alexandra was talking about, meteorite impacts. And this map on the left is the location of the known meteorites, official meteorites of the Philippines. And we're now trying to correlate those with ethnographic evidence from some of these ancestral tribes that date back periods of tens of thousands of years. So what other kind of projects we're doing? We're looking at the Cordilleran people. So these are the ones from the very northern part, central part of the Philippines, and linking those in with two particular tribes in Taiwan, which have identical mitochondrial DNA systems. So these people are directly related. We're now comparing the astronomical systems, and we're again tracking those back through time. We're looking at the way in which hunter-gatherer astronomical systems change when you get the introduction of rice cultivators in various parts of Southeast Asia, particularly in Java, for example. We're looking at hill tribe astronomy in Southeast Asia and South Asia, that's India, the way in which you've got people who've migrated from southern China over the last 2,000 years into this area, and you can trace the way in which their cultures change as a result of relocating. And finally, just especially for you, Dwayne, and for you, Ray, what about the cassowary in the night sky? When we look at the emu in the night sky, it's not found throughout the whole of Australia. I've been doing some work with people from far northern Queensland, and this is something you'd be able to do too. We've got the cassowary there, but there's no sign of the cassowary in the night sky. So maybe this is a project we can expand further to get colleagues from New Guinea and have a look at whether there's a cassowary in the night sky. Okay, I think that's about all for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that. We're out of time right now, but what we're going to do is we're going to have a 30-minute coffee break. So if you have any questions for Wayne, grab them as you run out, ask away, and we'll try to see if there's a way you might be able to respond to any questions that might come online. So we're going to come back in 30 minutes. So come out. We're going to have some videos playing here of other talks. We couldn't fit into the schedule, but we've got drinks, coffee, and tea out towards the front. Thanks. Yes, for those of you who need to complete your registration, please go back to the front desk and do that.
Sorry, so can I just check my presentation, which got a video, so if it's working?
Let's check it. Let's check it.
So.
Just, we got a few things to do at once, so
I-
just
I-
give me
listen,
1 second and
finish
we'll get there.